The blizzard swallowed the town whole. Houses vanished, fences disappeared, even roads became nothing but white walls of silence. Rescuers gave up, convinced no one could still be alive under the frozen ruins. But through that deadly stillness, a soldier heard something no one else did, a girl's whisper. Weak, broken, but alive. With his K9 pressed to the snow, Daniel gave the only order that mattered: find her. The storm hadn't just covered the town, it had erased it. By dawn, Miller's Creek no longer looked like a place where families lived. It was a frozen desert, a wasteland of white dunes stretching into emptiness. Roofs were buried, chimneys snapped under weight, and the schoolyard, where children had once played, was only a jagged shape under 20 feet of drift. The blizzard had taken fences, roads, even the sound of the church bell. All that was left was silence. Daniel trudged forward, his boots sinking knee-deep, then waist-deep, every step a battle. His breath fogged inside his scarf, freezing instantly against his lashes. Shadow, his German shepherd, plowed beside him, his fur stiff with frost, his harness light cutting a faint glow through the haze. Easy, boy, Daniel muttered, his voice hoarse. Slow and steady. Shadow didn't slow. His nose pressed low, sniffing, then lifting to test the air. He was working, hunting for what humans couldn't see. Snowstorms had no mercy, but a dog's nose never lied. Daniel's radio crackled uselessly at his chest. Command had pulled the last cruise back an hour ago, visibility 0, danger too high, odds too low. They had called the search a loss. But Daniel had seen too many losses overseas turn into lives saved by one more step, one more dig. He wasn't leaving. Not yet. The wind had softened now, falling into a lull, but the quiet was worse than the roar. Silence pressed on his ears, heavy, absolute. Snow muffled everything, turning the world into a tomb. Daniel stopped, crouching, scanning the endless white. Shadow halted too, ears twitching. For a moment, the only sound was Daniel's pulse thudding in his frozen skull. Then, something. A thread of sound. So faint he thought it might be the storm playing tricks. A single word, broken in half, help. Daniel's heart slammed against his ribs. He tore his scarf down, pressing his ear to the snow. His breath stilled. There it was again. Weak. Fragile. A child's voice. Please. Shadow. Daniel hissed. Mark it. The shepherd lunged forward, nose stabbing into the drift. He dug furiously, paws flinging powder in frantic bursts. His bark cracked through the silence, sharp, certain. Daniel dropped to his knees, clawing with gloved hands. Snow burned his skin like fire, but he didn't stop. His breath came ragged, each exhale steaming. The drift gave way slowly, revealing an ice-crusted scarf, then a sleeve, pink fabric stiff with frost. God, Daniel whispered. He ripped faster, clearing snow from a tiny face, pale and still against the white. Lips blue, eyes closed, lashes clumped with ice. A girl, 7, maybe 8. Her chest moved. Barely. Daniel pressed his ear close. Her lips parted, releasing a breath no louder than a prayer. Cold. He swallowed hard, his throat raw. Emily? My name's Daniel. I've got you. Her eyes flickered, dull, dazed, but alive. Shadow pressed in, curling his body against hers, heat radiating into the hollow Daniel had dug. The dog whined low, nudging her cheek with his muzzle. Daniel ripped his pack open with numb fingers, pulling out a heat pack. He cracked it, shoved it gently inside her coat, then wrapped his scarf tighter around her. Stay with us, Emily. You whisper, we'll answer. You stop, we lose you. Don't stop. Her lips trembled, forming another whisper. Dog. Daniel managed a broken laugh, his eyes stinging. Yeah, that's Shadow. He found you. He's not letting go. Shadow barked once, sharp and certain, tail flicking despite the storm. Daniel pulled Emily into his arms, cradling her against his chest. The cold bit deeper now, stealing into his own bones, but he ignored it. Her weight was frighteningly light, but her heartbeat fluttered against him like a bird refusing to fall. He rose, staggering against the drift, Shadow pushing at his leg as if to help hold them up. "We've got her, boy. Now we take her home." The storm loomed around them, silent, waiting. But it had failed to bury everything. It hadn't buried her whisper. And that whisper had been enough to bring a soldier and his dog running. Daniel could feel it. Her body was too cold, too still. The whisper had proved she was alive, but hypothermia didn't care about whispers. It crept slow and silent, stealing heat until even breath forgot its rhythm. He pulled Emily tighter against his chest, wrapping his parka around her like a second skin. His own body shuddered at the loss of insulation, but he didn't care. Her warmth came first. Shadow pressed close to his side, wedging himself against the girl, his thick fur forming a wall against the storm's teeth. "Good boy," Daniel rasped, rubbing the shepherd's neck. "Give her everything. Don't let the cold touch her." The world was nothing but white emptiness. No houses, no fences, no landmarks, just drift after drift, the sky and the ground fused into one endless shroud. The radio at Daniel's chest crackled with static, but no voice answered when he tried. Rescue teams were gone, roads erased, and daylight fading fast. He adjusted Emily carefully, tucking her mittened hands against his chest. "Emily," he whispered. "You've got to fight me a little. Stay awake. Tell Shadow something, he's listening." Her lips moved, a faint ghost of sound. "Warm." Daniel swallowed hard, relief flooding through him. "That's right. He's warm because he's stubborn. He won't leave you." Shadow gave a single woof, low and reassuring, as if confirming his orders. Emily's eyes fluttered open for a heartbeat, then shut again, but her whisper had weight now. She wasn't gone yet. Daniel scanned the horizon. If he kept walking blind, he'd lose both of them. He needed shelter. Somewhere to build fire, to trap heat. Barns, sheds, even a half-buried car could mean survival. But finding one in this white wasteland was a needle-in-snow search. Shadow suddenly froze. His head lifted, ears swiveling. He sniffed hard, circling, then pushed his nose into the wind. "What is it, boy?" Daniel asked, already adjusting his grip on Emily. The shepherd bounded forward a few steps, then barked, two sharp, urgent calls. His found something signal. Daniel stumbled after him, dragging his legs through waist-deep snow. Shadow darted to a drift, digging furiously. Within moments, his paws hit wood. A fence post. Daniel's chest clenched. Where there was fence, there was structure. He pushed forward, following the buried line until a dark shape rose out of the white, angled roof, sagging under weight but still standing. A barn, half consumed by snow. Shadow barked again, circling the door, his body vibrating with urgency. Daniel kicked snow away from the frame, shoving with his shoulder until the door cracked open. The storm's roar dulled instantly as he stepped inside. The air was still frigid, but without the wind's claws it felt like reprieve. The barn was dark, filled with collapsed hay bales and broken beams, but it was shelter. Daniel laid Emily on a pile of straw, layering his scarf over her. Shadow curled against her other side, pressing his full weight into her body. Daniel worked fast, his fingers clumsy with cold. He dragged an old tin bucket from a corner, scraped splinters off broken wood, and struck a match from his emergency kit. The flame sputtered, nearly died, then caught. Fire flickered in the bucket, small and weak, but alive. Orange glow spilled across Emily's pale face. Daniel leaned close, rubbing her hands briskly, forcing blood back into her fingers. "Stay with me, Em." You whisper, we answer. Don't let silence win. Her lips parted again. "Dog." Daniel smiled, cracked but real. "Yeah. That's Shadow. He's yours now." The shepherd licked her cheek, tail thumping once, slow and steady. Daniel sat back, watching her chest rise a little stronger with each breath of warm air. His own body shook, exhaustion gnawing at him, but his eyes never left her. The storm slammed against the barn outside, furious that it had lost its prey. The roof groaned, snow hissing through cracks, but the firelight held them in a fragile circle of life. For the first time since the whisper, Daniel allowed himself to breathe. They had bought minutes, maybe hours, but not forever. The storm would not forgive them. He stroked Shadow's head, voice low. "We gave her the first breath of warmth. Now we've got to keep her breathing." Shadow pressed harder against the girl, eyes glowing in the firelight, as if vowing, "I'll hold the line." The barn had given them what the storm wanted to steal, time. But time was fragile. Daniel fed splinters into the bucket fire, watching the flames lick greedily at the wood. The warmth spread unevenly, barely enough to hold back the cold gnawing at their bones. Still, it was life, and that was more than most outside had. Emily stirred, her eyes half opening in the dim glow. Her lips moved, dry and cracked. "Light." Daniel leaned close, voice low but firm. "That's right. Firelight. You stay with it, Emily. Don't let the dark pull you under." Shadow shifted beside her, pressing his muzzle to her cheek, then curling his body tighter against hers. Every exhale from his lungs was a blanket over her small frame. Daniel rubbed his fur, whispering, "Good boy. Don't let her drift away." The storm roared against the barn walls, furious at being shut out. Each gust rattled loose boards, sending powdery snow drifting in. The roof groaned, beams creaking under the weight piling above. Daniel glanced up, jaw tight. Shelter had saved them for now, but it was failing. He rose, moving cautiously across the dark space. His boots crunched over frozen straw. He scanned every corner, every crack. A hayloft half collapsed. Tools scattered, rusted. An old ladder snapped in two. And high above, a jagged split where daylight peeked in through white drifts pressing hard against the roof. Snow hissed down, sprinkling across the floor like salt. "Damn," Daniel muttered under his breath. The barn wasn't going to last. A few more hours of storm, and the whole roof would fold, burying them inside. He clenched his fists. He needed a plan. Behind him, Emily coughed weakly. Daniel rushed back, kneeling at her side. Her eyelids fluttered, her face pale but not as lifeless as before. The fire and Shadow's warmth were fighting for her. "You're strong," Daniel said softly. "You've got soldier blood in you, I can tell." Her lips trembled into a whisper. "Mom said, never quit." Daniel swallowed hard, the words hitting deep. She was right. And you're not quitting tonight. The roof above popped, wood snapping like a bone. Snow cascaded in a sudden spray, dusting Emily's blanket. Shadow leapt up, barking, body angled toward the crack as if daring it to fall closer. Daniel dragged Emily's blanket tighter, shielding her, then shoved another board against the weak spot in the roof. It wouldn't last long, but it bought them a little more time. He crouched again, rubbing Emily's arms briskly. Her eyes opened for a moment, finding Shadow. She whispered, "Don't let him go." Daniel smiled faintly, though his eyes burned. "I couldn't if I tried. He's yours now." The shepherd wagged his tail once, then lay back down beside her, pressing his chest against hers, syncing his breath with her own. For a brief moment, the circle of fire, child, soldier, and dog felt unbreakable. But outside, the storm wasn't done. The wind shifted, rattling the door with brutal force. Daniel froze. That wasn't just wind, it had rhythm. A slam, pause, slam again. Like someone, or something, pushed against it. Shadow's head shot up. He growled low, hackles rising, ears locked on the door. Daniel's hand went to his knife instinctively. His heart thudded. The rescue crews had pulled back hours ago. No one should be out here. No one human, at least. Emily stirred, whispering faintly, "Who's there?" Daniel crouched low, signaling Shadow with 2 fingers. "Quiet. Guard." The shepherd crept toward the door, body taut, growl rumbling like distant thunder. The door slammed again, harder this time. Snow puffed inward, shaking the hinges. Daniel rose slowly, knife drawn, body angled between Emily and the noise. The fire crackled in the silence, its glow flickering across his face. For one breathless moment, the barn felt like a battlefield again. And in the stillness that followed, Daniel realized something: the storm wasn't the only enemy out here. The barn's silence broke with another slam against the door, harder, sharper, deliberate. This wasn't the storm testing wood and nails. It was a hand. A fist. A presence. Daniel's grip on the knife tightened. His boots shifted into a wide stance, shoulders squared. Every instinct from years in combat surged back. Shelter had turned into a choke point. If someone forced their way in, there was nowhere to fall back. Shadow crouched low, teeth bared, his growl vibrating through the straw. The shepherd's body was a drawn bow, waiting for the string to snap. His breath fogged in the dim firelight, his eyes never leaving the trembling door. Emily stirred beneath her blanket, her voice a thin thread. "Who is it?" Daniel glanced at her quickly. "Quiet now, Emily. Don't move." He laid a hand on Shadow's back, steadying him. The dog quivered with energy, ears flicking forward at the next sound. It came suddenly. 3 knocks. Slow. Spaced. Not frantic, not random. Intentional. Daniel's chest tightened. "Not the wind," he whispered. The door shuddered again, snow puffing in around the edges. Then, a voice. Muffled by the storm, weak but human. "Open, please." Daniel froze. His breath hissed white in the cold air. Shadow's growl deepened, tail stiff. He stepped closer to the door, voice steady but edged like steel. "Who's there?" For a moment, only silence. Then the voice again, cracked and broken. "Help, Storm, please." Emily whispered, "It's someone," her eyes fluttered half shut. "Maybe, rescue." Daniel's jaw clenched. He wanted to believe it, but his gut twisted. Rescue teams carried radios, flares. They called names, shouted loud to be heard. They didn't whisper like shadows in the storm. He crouched by Emily, pressing her mittened hand into Shadow's fur. "Stay with him. He won't leave you." The shepherd didn't flinch. His body remained locked on the door, as though every fiber of him screamed danger. Daniel moved slowly, knife low, his other hand gripping the door latch. If this is a trick, they'll regret knocking. The fire sputtered behind him, shadows crawling up the walls. Emily's eyes stayed fixed on him, half-lidded, trust written in her fragile stare. He pulled the latch. The door creaked, a slice of blizzard roaring through the gap. Snow burst inward, stinging his face. A figure stumbled in. The man collapsed to his knees, snow pouring off his shoulders. His coat was torn, beard crusted with ice, eyes wild. He gasped raggedly, clutching at the floor. "Thank God, shelter." Shadow lunged forward, barking furiously. Daniel caught his harness just in time, holding him back with effort. "Stay!" Daniel barked. Shadow froze but didn't relax. The man sagged against a crate, breath shaking. Farmhouse, roof collapsed. Been walking, hours. Would have died out there. His eyes flicked toward Emily, and his expression softened. You saved her. She's alive. Daniel didn't lower his knife. Name? The man coughed, pulling his scarf down. Earl. Tanner. My land's north of here. Daniel studied him, every muscle tense. The details could be true. But something in Earl's eyes flickered, desperation, or something darker. The storm had broken many men in different ways. Emily stirred weakly. He, cold. Daniel pressed his lips thin. She saw only another life in need. But Daniel saw risk. Shelter had already been failing. One more body meant one more chance for chaos. Shadow remained rigid, hackles bristling, tail stiff. His eyes never left Earl. Daniel eased Emily closer to the fire, then looked at the man again. If you stay, you follow my orders. One mistake, and you're back in the storm. Earl nodded quickly, too quickly. Yes, yes, whatever you say. Just, don't throw me out there. The roof groaned above them, snow sliding down in heavy sheets. The storm clawed at the barn walls, furious. Inside, the fire cracked, the child shivered, the dog growled, and the soldier kept his knife steady. The storm outside wanted them buried. But Daniel knew storms weren't the only thing that killed in silence. The fire's weak glow trembled across the barn walls, painting long shadows that danced with every crackle. Emily's shallow breaths had steadied, but her body still trembled beneath the blankets. Shadow stayed curled tight against her, his eyes locked on the new arrival. The shepherd didn't trust easily, and tonight his instincts were louder than the storm outside. Earl Tanner sat slumped against a crate, rubbing his hands together, his face twisted with exhaustion. Snow clung to his beard in icy clumps, and his coat was torn at the sleeve. He looked broken, any man lost in this blizzard would. But Daniel's eyes stayed sharp. Broken didn't mean harmless. You came from the north? Daniel asked, voice low, knife still in his hand. Earl nodded quickly, too quickly. Farmhouse roof went in. I lit a lantern outside, tried to mark my way back, but storm took everything. Saw your firelight. Lucky. Damn lucky. Daniel's jaw tightened. A lantern. That explained the faint glow Shadow had trailed earlier. But something didn't sit right. No glass soot smudges on Earl's gloves. No burn smell on his coat. If he'd really been carrying a lantern, there should have been signs. Shadow growled again, a low rumble that made the hairs on Daniel's neck prickle. Quiet, boy, Daniel said softly, though he didn't mean it. He trusted the dog's instincts more than any man's words. Emily stirred, her lips parting faintly. Who? Daniel knelt beside her, brushing snow-damp hair from her forehead. Just another traveler. Stay warm, Emily. Shadow's got you. Her eyes flicked toward Earl, dull but curious. The farmer offered her a trembling smile. She's strong. Stronger than most. Reminds me of my niece, his voice trailed, eyes distant. Daniel didn't answer. He studied the man's hands. They shook, but not from cold, more like nerves. Outside, the storm slammed against the roof again, sending snow sifting through the cracks. The barn groaned, its frame bending. The sound made Emily whimper, clutching at Shadow's fur. The dog pressed tighter, licking her cheek once before turning his eyes back to Earl. Daniel rose slowly, his shadow stretching warm across the straw. If the barn goes, we move. You follow me, you follow the dog. Nothing else. Earl nodded again, his eyes flicking down. Yes, yes. Anything. But the quickness of his answer nagged at Daniel. Too eager. Too submissive. A man who truly survived the blizzard alone would have more fight left in him. Shadow barked suddenly, sharp and loud, lunging a step forward. His nose pointed at Earl's coat, tail stiff. Earl flinched back, hands raised. What's wrong with him? Daniel's voice was calm, cold. He smells everything the storm can't hide. For a long, tense moment, no one moved. Only the storm outside kept screaming, rattling the door, demanding entrance. Finally, Daniel sheathed his knife, but his eyes never left Earl. Get some rest. You'll need it if we move at first light. Earl sagged, letting out a shaky breath, and leaned back against the crate. But his eyes, those darting, restless eyes, kept flicking to the fire, to Emily, and back again. Daniel sat near the girl, one hand on Shadow's harness. The shepherd didn't relax. His growl faded to silence, but his gaze never wavered from Earl Tanner. The barn roof popped again, louder this time. Snow slid down in a heavy cascade, shaking the beams. Emily gasped, whispering, "It's falling." Daniel soothed her quickly. "Not yet. You stay with Shadow. He'll hold it up with his teeth if he has to." Shadow thumped his tail once, as if confirming the promise. But Daniel's eyes drifted back to Earl, who now sat staring into the fire, his face lit orange and hollow. He muttered something under his breath, words Daniel couldn't catch. The soldier leaned back against the wall, his mind racing. The storm outside wanted to bury them. But inside this barn, Daniel wasn't sure which threat was worse, the snow above their heads, or the stranger sitting 10 feet away. The fire crackled low, throwing shadows across the barn's beams. The storm outside had eased for a moment, but Daniel knew it was only gathering strength for another assault. Silence pressed in, heavy and brittle. Emily had slipped into a shallow sleep, her head tucked into Shadow's fur. The shepherd stayed still as stone, chest rising in sync with hers, every muscle taut. His ears twitched at every groan of the roof, every rattle of the door. But his eyes, those unblinking eyes, never left Earl Tanner. The farmer sat hunched by the crate, hands pressed close to the fire, his shoulders shaking. He looked broken, but Daniel had seen broken men before. They cried, they prayed, they stared blankly. Earl was different. He muttered. Constantly. Words too low to catch, but steady, like a rhythm. Daniel leaned forward, voice sharp in the silence. "What are you saying?" Earl froze. His eyes flicked up, wide for a heartbeat, then he forced a laugh. "Just praying. For the storm to break." Daniel's jaw tightened. He'd heard plenty of prayers on battlefields, but none sounded like that. Not muttering like a chant. Shadow growled low, the sound vibrating against Emily's cheek. The girl stirred, whispering faintly, "Dog," before slipping back into sleep. Daniel stood, pacing slowly toward Earl. "Where exactly is your farm?" Earl's hands twitched. "North. Along the creek." Roof collapsed. "I barely made it out alive." "Along the creek?" Daniel pressed. That whole stretch was evacuated before the storm hit. Barns cleared, livestock moved. Earl hesitated, eyes darting left. I stayed behind. Foolish, maybe. Didn't want to abandon everything." The lie was clumsy. Daniel's gut clenched. The storm might confuse sound and distance, but a man's eyes gave him away. And Earl's eyes shifted like trapped animals. He crouched low, knife flashing briefly in the firelight. "If you're lying, you picked the wrong barn to crawl into." Earl's breathing quickened. "I'm not lying. He stopped himself, swallowing hard. "I just needed shelter. That's all." Shadow barked sharply, lunging forward until the rope strained. His teeth bared, hackles bristling. Daniel caught the harness, steadying him, but he didn't silence him. Shadow's nose doesn't lie. What does he smell, Earl? The farmer's face twitched. He looked at Emily, then back to the fire. His hands rubbed harder, skin reddening. Nothing. Just a tired, frozen man. But Daniel's instincts screamed otherwise. Something was off, something Earl wasn't saying. The roof above them groaned again, snow shifting. Daniel forced himself back, kneeling beside Emily. He adjusted her blanket, pulling her closer against Shadow's warmth. He whispered so only the dog could hear, "Watch him." Shadow's ears flicked once in acknowledgement. Hours dragged. The storm returned, hammering the barn with fists of wind and avalanches of snow. Each slam rattled the beams, threatening collapse. But inside, a different battle brewed, a silent standoff between a soldier's suspicion and a stranger's secret. Emily coughed weakly, waking for a moment. Her eyes half opened, clouded but searching. "Daniel, warm?" He brushed her hair gently. "Warm enough. Shadow's keeping you safe." Her gaze drifted to Earl. "Who's he?" Daniel's jaw flexed. "Just someone passing through." Earl forced another smile, thin and uneasy. "That's right, little one. Just passing through." But Shadow didn't move. His growl hummed beneath the storm's howl, never stopping. The fire sputtered, wood dwindling. Daniel tossed the last splinters into the bucket, watching the flames claw upward. He knew they couldn't stay much longer. The roof wouldn't hold, and the fire would die. They'd have to move. And when they did, Earl Tanner would have to move with them. Daniel's hand brushed the hilt of his knife. He didn't like the idea of turning his back on a man whose eyes darted like that. The storm wanted to bury them. But Daniel couldn't shake the feeling that the real danger sat 10 feet away, muttering to himself in the fire's fading glow. The roof finally gave its warning. A long crack ripped through the timbers overhead, followed by a slow groan that made the entire barn tremble. Snow hissed through the widening seam like sand pouring through an hourglass. Daniel's jaw tightened. They were out of time. He bundled Emily tighter against his chest, feeling the faint rise and fall of her breathing. Shadow pressed close, tail stiff, eyes locked on him, ready for the next order. Earl stood awkwardly near the door, his hands twitching, his eyes darting between them and the roof as though calculating whether to stay or flee. "We move," Daniel said firmly. Earl flinched. "In this storm? You'll kill her." Daniel shot him a hard glare. "Staying here kills her faster." Shadow barked once, sharp and certain, as if to seal the order. Daniel pulled his scarf higher, adjusted Emily's blanket, and clipped the rope to Shadow's harness. "He leads. We follow. No one breaks line. You hear me?" Earl nodded too quickly. "Why, yes. Of course." The door groaned as Daniel shoved it open, unleashing the storm's fury. Snow slammed into them instantly, a wall of white and wind that stole his breath. His boots sank knee-deep, then thigh-deep, each step a battle. Shadow lunged forward into the blizzard, nose low, body straining against the rope. His bark was swallowed by the wind, but Daniel trusted the pull. The dog had never failed him, not in deserts, not in cities, not in this frozen wasteland. Emily stirred faintly, whispering against his chest. "Bright." Daniel pressed his chin to her hair. "Not yet, Em. But we'll find it. Just hold on." The shepherd plowed through drifts, tail stiff like a compass needle. Snow stung Daniel's eyes, freezing his lashes until every blink felt like breaking glass. His thighs burned from trudging, his chest ached from carrying both Emily and his own doubt. Then, dark shapes emerged through the storm. At first they were ghosts, shadows twisting in the white. But slowly they sharpened into tall pines, their black trunks leaning under the storm's weight. A line of trees. Shelter of a different kind. Shadow barked twice, urgent, triumphant. Daniel exhaled hard. Good boy. Trail the line. They angled into the trees, the gale breaking slightly against the trunks. The difference was immediate, still brutal, but survivable. Snow swirled instead of stabbing, the wind dulled to a shove instead of a blade. Emily whispered again, her voice so faint he barely caught it. Trees. Yes, Daniel murmured. They're our road now. Stay awake for me, Em. Shadow kept close to the trunks, weaving a path with precision. Daniel followed, each step a battle but guided by certainty. Behind them, Earl stumbled often, cursing under his breath, his voice snatched by the storm. He lagged, then lurched forward, always just close enough to stay in sight. Shelters west, he shouted once. Follow the trees. You'll see it soon. Daniel didn't answer. He trusted the dog, not the man. The storm screamed, punishing every step. Drifts rose chest-high, forcing Daniel to drag his legs like anchors. His breath came ragged, frosting his scarf. Shadow never slowed. His paws tore through the snow, his harness rope taut, his tail flicking like a signal, this way. Stay with me. Earl collapsed suddenly, falling to his knees. His voice cracked. I can't go further. Daniel slowed, anger burning. Get up. I'm finished. Earl gasped, slamming a fist into the snow. Leave me, or we all die. Shadow barked furiously, straining forward, demanding motion. Daniel's jaw locked. He couldn't waste time, but abandoning Earl in the storm meant carrying his ghost forever. He grabbed the farmer's arm, yanking him to his feet. You move, or you die here. Your choice. Earl's eyes flickered with something, fear, or resentment, but he stumbled forward again, clinging to the line of trees. Minutes stretched into hours. The storm never relented. But finally, Shadow stopped, stiffening. His nose pressed into the wind, his body vibrating with urgency. Daniel squinted through the white. There, half-buried stone steps leading down into darkness. A cellar entrance. Earl staggered up beside him, wild hope in his eyes. That's it. That's the church basement. Daniel's gut twisted. The steps were real, but silent. No glow, no sound, no voices of survivors. Just blackness yawning under the snow. Shadow growled low, ears pinned back. Daniel pressed Emily closer, his breath hissing. The storm wanted them buried. But something in that silence felt wrong. Very wrong. The steps yawned downward, black and silent. Snow clung to the stone edges like claws, the entrance half buried beneath the storm's rage. Daniel stood at the top, Emily pressed against his chest, Shadow stiff at his side. Every instinct in him screamed caution. Earl Tanner stumbled forward, his eyes fever-bright. This is it. The church basement. They're inside, you'll see. He scrambled to clear the drift, pawing at snow with frantic hands. Daniel's jaw tightened. He'd seen basements like this before, in war zones, in villages, in towns abandoned by their own people. They were never this quiet. No lantern glow. No muffled voices. No heat rising. Just stillness, heavy and wrong. Shadow growled deep in his chest, low and steady, ears pinned back. His nose twitched, pulling away from the opening like it carried a stench no one else could smell. Daniel shifted Emily in his arms. Her lips trembled with a whisper. Don't. His throat clenched. Even half-conscious, the girl felt it. Earl, Daniel said flatly. How long ago did you see people here? The farmer's hands froze on the snow. His eyes darted. I don't know. Hours? The storm twists things. But it's here, I swear it's here. Daniel's voice caught like ice. Or it was never here. Earl spun, anger flaring. You think I'd drag you out here to die? You think I... Shadow barked, sharp and violent, lunging forward until the rope snapped taut. His teeth bared, hackles bristling. The sound silenced Earl mid-sentence. Daniel's hand rested on his knife. My dog's nose has kept me alive longer than men's words. And right now, he says this place is wrong. Snow slammed down from the pines, rattling branches. The storm seemed to laugh, howling louder around them. Earl's shoulders sagged, his face twisting with desperation. Fine. Maybe I was wrong. Maybe it's further down the line. But if we don't find shelter soon, she dies. And then you'll wish you'd listened. Daniel's grip on Emily tightened. Her heartbeat fluttered faintly against his chest, fragile as a bird. He knew the farmer was right about one thing: time was running out. But trust could kill faster than cold. He turned to Shadow. Trail. Find the truth. The shepherd sniffed hard, circling the entrance. He growled again, then jerked west, pulling at the rope, away from the cellar. His body vibrated with urgency, his bark sharp, commanding. Daniel didn't hesitate. We follow him. Earl staggered, eyes wide. You'd trust a dog over a man? Daniel's gaze burned. Every time. Shadow lunged ahead, carving a path along the trees. Daniel trudged after him, Emily cradled tight, each step tearing fire through his legs. The storm howled louder, furious they had defied it. Earl stumbled behind, cursing, muttering, his face twisted in something between fear and resentment. Minutes blurred. Snow whipped at their faces, clawed at their clothes. Daniel's vision dimmed at the edges, his strength draining. But Shadow never slowed, his tail stiff, his body sure. Then, another shape emerged through the white. Not stone steps. A spire. Daniel blinked, forcing his frozen eyes wider. The storm peeled back just enough to reveal it, a church steeple, half buried, its cross still piercing skyward like a black spear. Shadow barked twice, triumphant. Daniel's chest heaved. There it is. The real one. Earl stumbled up, staring in disbelief. His voice cracked. No. I swear I thought. Daniel cut him off, voice low and sharp. The storm twists everything. But you, he jabbed a finger at him. You knew better than to lead us to silence. Shadow pressed forward, dragging Daniel toward the steeple. Emily stirred weakly, her lips parting with a breath. Found. Daniel pressed his cheek to her hair, whispering, Yes, Emily. Shadow found it. Behind them, the false cellar mouth disappeared into the storm, swallowed whole. And Daniel knew, the blizzard hadn't just buried the town. It had set traps, whispered lies, twisted men's minds. But tonight, a soldier listened to his dog instead of the storm. The steeple loomed through the whiteout like a miracle. Half buried in drifts, its cross still pierced skyward, defying the blizzard's fury. For Daniel, it wasn't just a building, it was proof that Shadow's nose had been right all along. Trail, boy! Daniel shouted, his voice raw. Shadow barked twice, bounding forward, his paws carving through the snow like blades. His harness light cut cones of glow through the storm, guiding them toward salvation. Emily stirred faintly in Daniel's arms, her lips trembling. Bright. Yes, Daniel whispered against her hair. You'll see light soon. Just hold on. They reached the side of the church where the drifts piled lower. Shadow clawed furiously at a half-buried door, barking in sharp, urgent bursts. Daniel adjusted Emily, wedged a shoulder against the frame, and shoved. The wood groaned, snow cracked, and then, with Earl's weight suddenly slamming beside him, it broke inward. Warmth spilled out. Not summer warmth, but enough, the glow of lanterns, the heat of stoves. Voices gasped inside. Hands reached out. Get them in. Daniel stumbled forward, cradling Emily tight. Dozens of eyes stared from the basement, families huddled under blankets, children clinging to mothers, men clutching tools instead of weapons. A circle of stoves burned in the corners, casting orange glow across the stone walls. Gasps rippled as medics rushed forward. "She's alive. Get her blankets. Hot packs, now." Daniel lowered Emily onto a cot. Her lips parted with a weak sigh as heat wrapped her. Shadow pressed close, his muzzle brushing her cheek, his tail thumping once, slow but steady. "She whispered," Daniel murmured, his throat raw. "She whispered, and he found her." Emily's eyes fluttered half open. She reached for Shadow with trembling fingers. "Don't, let go." The shepherd licked her hand, solemn as a vow. Around them, whispers spread like fire, the soldier, the dog, the child in the storm. Neighbors clutched each other tighter, some weeping, some bowing their heads. Hope, the one thing the blizzard couldn't bury, had slipped back into the room. Earl slumped against the wall, panting, his face hollow. He muttered to himself, shaking his head. I thought the cellar was real." Daniel didn't look at him. His eyes stayed on Emily, on Shadow, on the tiny rise and fall of her chest. For the first time since the whisper, he allowed himself to breathe. A volunteer commander approached, coat ragged but eyes sharp. She crouched beside Daniel. "You carried more than one life through that storm. You did what no one else could." Daniel shook his head slowly. His hand rested on Shadow's harness. "No. He did." The shepherd glanced up, eyes calm, ears twitching as though he understood every word. The commander followed Daniel's gaze, then nodded. "Then the story will be told right. It'll be his name they remember." Children peeked from blankets, staring at the dog with wide eyes. Mothers whispered prayers. Men clapped Daniel's shoulder, their grip heavy with gratitude. But Daniel only leaned closer to Emily, his voice barely above the crackle of the stoves. "You're safe now. The storm didn't take you." Shadow wouldn't let it. Outside, the blizzard screamed against the walls, furious at its loss. Snow slammed, wind clawed, but the Church of Shadows held firm. Inside, warmth pushed back the cold, light pushed back the dark, and whispers turned into voices of survival. By dawn, the blizzard had burned itself out. It didn't end with a roar, but with exhaustion, the wind easing to a sigh, the snow settling heavy and still. When sunlight finally broke through, Miller's Creek was unrecognizable. Homes were buried to their rooftops, barns flattened, fences vanished. Yet above the endless white, one thing still stood, the church steeple, its cross piercing the sky like a promise. Inside the basement, the air had shifted. It was no longer fear that filled the stone walls, but relief. Families stirred from restless sleep, children peeked from blankets, neighbors spoke in quiet, trembling voices. The storm was over, and they had survived. Daniel sat against the wall, exhaustion carved deep into his face. Emily lay nestled under layers of blankets beside him, her breathing steady now, her lips no longer blue. Shadow rested half on her, half on Daniel, his great body forming a shield even as he finally let himself doze. His ears twitched at every sound, but for the first time in days, his eyes closed. Emily stirred, blinking at the lantern glow. Her voice was hoarse but stronger than before. "Daniel, is it morning?" Daniel smiled faintly. "Yeah, the storm's done shouting." She shifted weakly, her hand searching until it found Shadow's fur. "He's warm." Daniel ruffled the dog's ears. "Warmest thing in the world. He carried you through it." Shadow wagged his tail once in his sleep, a lazy thump against the stone floor. The commander of the volunteers approached, crouching low. Her voice carried both awe and gratitude. "You brought her back from the storm. Without you, and him, she'd have been buried for good." Daniel shook his head. His gaze stayed on the shepherd. Don't thank me. Thank the one who listens when the world tries to go silent. The woman nodded solemnly. Then it's his name we'll carry. Hours later, the doors opened. Rescue crews poured in with sleds, blankets, and food. The people of Miller's Creek blinked against the blinding snow as they climbed out, one by one, into the fragile morning. Daniel carried Emily in his arms. Shadow bounded ahead, leaping through the drifts, his chest heaving, his fur glinting in the pale light. The storm had stolen barns, roads, and fences, but it hadn't stolen this, the sight of life walking back into daylight. Emily squinted, her breath fogging. It's bright. Daniel pressed his cheek to her hair. Bright means alive. The sleds waited. Medics reached for Emily, but she clung to Shadow's harness with surprising strength. Don't let the storm take me, she whispered again. Shadow pressed his head into her side, eyes steady, as if promising forever. Only when she loosened her grip did the medics lift her, wrapping her carefully. The shepherd padded alongside until Daniel called him back. He stopped, chest heaving, snow frosting his fur, but his eyes never left the girl as she was carried away. Neighbors began digging out rooftops, clearing paths, lifting one another from the wreckage. Miller's Creek had been broken, but not destroyed. And word spread quickly about the soldier, the child, and the dog who refused to stop digging when the world said it was over. Daniel stood at the church steps, Shadow pressed against his leg, both of them staring at the horizon. The storm had taken much, but not everything. Not Emily. Not hope. Not the bond forged between a whisper, a soldier, and a dog. He looked down at Shadow, brushing snow from his ears. You gave her back the world, boy. The shepherd wagged his tail slowly, eyes still locked on the sled carrying Emily away. And in that frozen town, beneath a morning sky, Miller's Creek whispered something back to the blizzard that had tried to erase it, we're still here.